Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. And many more, and many more, and many more. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. It is season 13 and it is episode 100. You heard that right. We have made it to the end of season 13. And if you've been with us this season, if you've been listening in, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back. If you have been following us from episode 1 all the way through to episode 100, give yourself a pat on the back. I want to thank you as listeners, as viewers, as people who take time out of your day to either listen or watch live or to come back and watch the replay. I want to say thank you for your time and for your attention. It is Wednesday, Relationship Wednesday, and we are going to be reading from one of the relationship books today. But I really wanted to end this segment on words from some of our ancestors. Um, it has been a fantastic, fantastic season. I feel like we have read through lots of books this season, even though we are carrying some over into season 14. But I feel like we have read through quite a few books. We've tackled quite a few subjects. We've had some really important and meaningful conversations through Daring Dialogues. And so, for those of you who leaned in, who listened, who shared your own insights, who commented, who came on and spoke, I want to say thank you to you for being willing to engage with me, being willing to engage the content. And I also want to say good morning to each of you coming in. I was thinking to myself today, because this is Relationship Wednesday, I was thinking to myself as I got up this morning about some of the things that I have seen over the past few weeks. And I said to myself, I wrote it in my journal, I said, taking relationship advice from psychotic, maladjusted people who are only in relationship with money is wild. And yet, here we are in 2024 with people eating up bad advice. At least read a book written by therapists if you're not going to go see one. Because I see people eating up really bad advice. I see people sharing insights that are maladjusted, insights that are coming out of their bitterness, and people are taking it as the gospel. And it is a little concerning. It is. And there's been times when I've tried to reason with people in comments over the past week. There's been times when I've tried to offer articles that people can go read. And it takes me back to another quote, which is older. I can't remember quite who said it, but they said, a man convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. In other words, if there is no mental will to change, if you're not open to change, if you're not open to another perspective, then it doesn't matter how truthful a new perspective is that comes, because you're not open to it. You're not willing to receive another perspective. And so I had to slow down a little bit this week. I had to say, you know what? People are entitled to their opinion. People are entitled to the delusion that they want to live in. People are entitled to live their life off of alternative facts. I just don't have to live mine that way. I don't have to live mine that way. I don't have to receive the alternative facts. I don't have to receive the vitriol that sometimes comes when you are trying to bring people into another perspective or show them some facts and some truth. I just say, hey, I'm not going to go back and forth with you. I'm going to present the information. If you want to continue on, I'm going to let you be there by yourself, or I'm going to block you if you keep tagging me. So even in my own life, I realize I have to continually set boundaries, right? Because as the writers has been sharing with us, Dr. Tawab, you sometimes have to come back and set those boundaries again. You sometimes have to come back and reinforce your boundaries. The other thing I want to say is, as I am going to be taking a break, I will be doing training. What will I be training on? I'll be training on new tools in the podcast space, new tools in the live streaming space, so that I can be up to date to better serve you when we resume with season 14. I am also going to still be doing Tuesday segments at noon. They will not be entitled Daring Dialogues because Daring Dialogues is a part of a series, but I will be on my Black Table Talk page on Tuesdays at 12 noon, and I will also podcast that series. So if you want to keep up with me over the summer, uh, between now and June, you can keep up with me on Black Table Talk, the Facebook page. I will be there only on Tuesdays at 12 noon. Now, back to training. as I get into as I get into training with some new tools, I will be announcing what tools that I'm working with and what other applications that we'll be using and that will be on. So you can stay tuned to our Daring Dialogues IG and our Daring Dialogues Facebook page because those are the places where I will be making the announcements. All right. So I wanted to put that out there just in case people don't see us and they're like, oh, what happened to the daily broadcast? This is what happened to the daily broadcast. All right. Okay. Let's get into this last segment in this chapter. And this is the book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. So we are actually finishing up chapter 5. So season 13, we're going to start with chapter 6. So if you have not gotten this book and you want to get this book and catch up to read along with us, feel free to do that. This book is also, I believe, available on Libby app. So if you don't want to purchase the book, if you have a local library card, you can get the Libby app, and you can also use the Libby app. I don't use it on my phone. I use it on my computer. You can type in your library card number and you can check out all kinds of books through the Libby app from everywhere and read it digitally. So if you don't want to purchase the book, you can still pick it up digitally through the Libby app. So when we come back, we will be in chapter 6. In her other book, Drama Free, we will be on chapter 7 when we come back. So the last 2 points that she is talking about in this chapter about what boundary violations look like, she's going to talk to us today about codependency and trauma bonding. Codependency and trauma bonding. Now, these words are very popular and they're often used on social media. You'll hear people drop the word, but people don't necessarily explain what they are and what they look like, which is what Dr. Tawab does here. Codependency. In codependent relationships, we believe we must help people avoid consequences, saving them from unpleasant experiences. We think it's our role to protect them, but rather than protect, we enable the other person to continue their unhealthy behavior. We see the person we're enabling as helpless and just unable to take care of themselves without us. The term codependent has been around for decades and is often used when describing dysfunctional family dynamics, especially when addiction is involved. But codependency pertains to any relationship where people become emotionally entangled with the feelings and outcomes of others. In codependent relationships, it's challenging to separate what we feel from what others think and feel. Codependency is well meaning, but we suffer because our own needs are often unmet or unnoticed. In fact, as codependents, we have a hard time distinguishing our needs from the needs of the other person. Enabling is a significant part of a codependent relationship. It involves supporting the unhealthy behaviors of someone through action or inaction. Codependency usually happens as a result of unhealthy boundaries. This is codependency. Here are some examples: overextending yourself, avoiding discussions about real issues or problems, cleaning up the mess that others have created for themselves, making excuses for the poor behavior of others, tending to other people's needs while neglecting your own, doing things for people instead of helping them do things for themselves, taking care of people with toxic behaviors, feeling as if when something happens to other people, it's happening to you, describing other people's problems as if they are your own, having difficulty existing in relationship without becoming the rescuer, troubleshooting problems for others before thinking of our own issues, letting people rely on you in an unhealthy way, having one sided relationships where you're doing all of the giving and they're doing all of the taking. In codependent relationships, one or both parties are dependent on the other for their survival. Therefore, codependency often leads to resentment, burnout, anxiety, depression, loneliness, depletion, and severe mental health issues. Being present for someone who won't care for themselves is hard work, but codependent relationships are harmful to all parties. For the enabler, their own needs are never or rarely met. For the enabled, they don't learn how to meet their own needs. So both people become worse together in codependent relationships. People who are codependent suffer from unhealthy boundaries, self esteem issues, people pleasing tendencies, and the need for control. By helping toxic people, they receive a sense of fulfillment. When I was in college, I loved watching the reality TV show Intervention. It's a show about families and friends trying to convince their addicted loved ones to get professional help. The people on the show usually talk about how they have enabled the addict to continue their addiction by offering money or a place to stay, for example. In some cases, people admitted to even enabling them to do drugs in their home because they felt it was safer. About halfway through the show, the friends and family members meet with a recovery coach who talks about how codependency has to stop if they want to save their loved ones. The recovery coach encourages healthy boundaries. Examples of codependency: when you go out with your friends, you refrain from drinking because you know they'll get drunk. You buy them drinks because you know they'll be upset with you if you don't. When your friend has had too much to drink, you drive them home and stay with them through the night to make sure they're okay. You worry about their drinking even when they don't seem to be concerned. You see the consequences of their actions and you attempt to rescue your friend. You've observed your sister manage money to such a degree, mismanage it, that she's been unable to provide financial support to her children. As a result, you become a surrogate parent to your niece and nephew. They call you when they need something because they know their mom will say no. You help because she mismanages her money and you don't want them to suffer because of her poor choices. Those are examples of codependency. Boundaries. Set clear expectations with regards to how you can help. Provide feedback about how the other person's behaviors are affecting you. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to care, but you can at least provide the feedback and let them know and not be silent. Support people without doing things for them. Wait for people to ask for help instead of offering before they ask. I had to learn that the hard way. Honor your commitment to yourself about what you will and will not tolerate in relationships. Be vocal about toxic behaviors that you are observing. Take care of yourself. Hold people accountable for caring for themselves. Help while teaching people how to help themselves. And that is codependency. Trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is probably a more recent and more frequently used term. So let's get into it. Trauma bonding happens as a result of emotional and intellectual boundary violations. Over time, a person is manipulated into believing that in some way they deserve what's happening to them. They think what's done to them is by accident or not intended to harm them. Trauma bonding can occur in friendships, dating relationships, or family relationships. Now, the way people have used this term is very wrong. Usually, when I hear people use the term trauma bonding, they will say, so and so identifies with what I'm going through. So that person has it. We've developed a bond. People call that trauma bonding, but that's not what trauma bonding is. Okay. This is what trauma bonding is: being made to believe that everything is your fault, breaking up and then going back to unhealthy relationships, making excuses for other people's poor behavior towards you, feeling like you can't get out of a toxic relationship, cycling from harsh treatment to kindness, not telling others how you're treated in your relationship because you fear they will see it as abuse, not standing up to someone who mistreats you. That is trauma bonding. Examples of trauma bonding. Jamie blamed the issues in her relationship on herself. She knew her boyfriend had problems, but she took ownership whenever he became triggered. She was afraid to share her relationship issues with her friends for fear they would judge her and him. Your father is verbally aggressive. He says you caused him to become angry because you didn't listen to him. After the verbal attack, he becomes affectionate and buys you small gifts. Your friend is mean to you in front of your other friends. You know they have a hard time in social situations, so you brush off their behavior. You believe they're mean simply because they feel uncomfortable in the situation. All of that is examples of trauma bonding. Boundaries. Be clear about how you expect to be treated. Stop people immediately when they say something mean or something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Tell them what you said makes me feel uncomfortable. Share your relationship issues only with people you trust. Act early when you notice a pattern forming in your relationships. The last one here is counter dependency. So we had codependency, trauma bonding, and now counter dependency. Counter dependency happens when we develop rigid boundaries to keep people at an emotional distance. Attachments to others are impaired with counter dependency as you are trying to avoid any connection, even when a relationship is healthy. This is counter dependency: difficulty being vulnerable, inability to ask for help, discomfort accepting help from other people, disinterest in the lives of others, preference for doing things yourself, fearful of being close to others, emotional distance, quickly feeling overwhelmed when people are vulnerable, pushing people away when things become too serious, constant feelings of loneliness. Examples of counter dependency. You meet a nice person and go on several dates with them. Everything seems to be going well, but you ghost them because they share how much they like you. Your friend gives you a card for your birthday that is loving and tender. You don't tell your friend how the card made you feel, and you don't speak to your friend afterwards for quite some time. Those are examples of counterdependency. Boundaries for counterdependency, folks. Practice sharing details of your life with others. This does not mean oversharing, but sharing. Tell people how they make you feel: good, sad, happy, excited, inspired, etc. Ask for help. This is especially true if you are the person who never asks for help. Accept help if someone offers it. So, in this chapter, we explored micro and macro level boundary violations. These may be violated in any type of relationship with coworkers, friends, family, romantic partners, and strangers. So, some violations are smaller than others. When a stranger violates your physical space, one time might not be significant. But if your coworker repeatedly violates your need for physical space or privacy, it's a much bigger problem. It's vital not to take ownership of how others treat you or to make excuses for their behavior. How they treat you is about who they are, not who you are. So, if you're up for the exercise today, I encourage you to grab your journal and think about the following questions. How do you think your life will be different once you've established healthy boundaries? In what relationships have you established healthy boundaries? And in what relationships have you been lackadaisical about establishing healthy boundaries? What are some specific actions that you can take to improve your boundaries? For some people, it might be get some. For other people, it might be restate them. For other people, it might be enforce them. All right. Again, that was the end of chapter 5 from Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself. Reclaim yourself. All right. I want to go to my book of African American quotations. You see all of those sticky tabs? That's who we're going to today. This book, even though it's not that big, but I think it's probably one of my best purchases thus far this year because it has just been filling my soul. I read a few before I go to bed, and it leaves me with very good thoughts and good wisdom from the ancestors. This first set of quotes is coming from Catherine Dunham. Catherine Dunham lived from 1909 to 2006. She was a dancer, a choreographer, anthropologist, social activist. She was a major innovator in the African American modern dance movement and leader in the field of ethnochoreology, or the study of folk dance. She created the genre of Afro Caribbean dance. She also has a memoir called A Touch of Innocence: Memoirs of Childhood. Here are Catherine Dunham's words. I used to want the words "she tried" on my tombstone. Now I want "she did it." There's a purifying process in dancing. We weren't pushing black is beautiful, we just showed it. Start something else besides a career that makes use of your creative ability, because if you don't, you will die inside as a person. Go within every day and find the inner strength so that the world will not blow your candle out. Preach, ma'am, preach, 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 preach. I actually 1,000% agree with her last two quotes. Find something creative to do besides a career. Preach, preach, preach. And preach, and preach, 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 and preach. All right. My next person here, well known Marvin Gaye. There isn't a whole lot of footage of Marvin Gaye. You can find a couple of things of him doing some short interviews, but I want to read to you his quotes. Marvin Gaye lived from 1939 to 1984. He was known as the Prince of Motown. Singer, songwriter, and drummer, he started with the Moonglows, a doo-wop group, and later became a solo recording artist for Motown. His hits include How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, What's Going On, and of course, one of his most famous, Sexual Healing. Here's what he has to say. Music is one of the closest link-ups with God that we can probably experience. I think it's a common vibrating tone of the musical notes that holds all life together. Most fear stems from sin. To limit one's sins, one must assuredly limit one's fear, thereby bringing more peace to one's spirit. If you cannot find peace within yourself, you will never find it anywhere else. When speaking on Motown's 25th anniversary, he said this: maybe today is the result of yesterday spent in wooden churches, singing the praises of our Maker in joyous harmony and love. Part of it has to be the songs we sang, working under the blazing sun to help pass the hard times. Yesterday was also Bessie Smith, New Orleans, and gospel choirs, folk songs, Bojangles. Yesterday was the birthplace of today. Songs of protest and anger, songs of gentleness, and songs of wounds left unattended for far too long. Songs to march to fly to make love to. It's music pure and simple and soulful. And this is a very, very, very powerful quote. Art is a way of possessing destiny. I would like to be remembered as one of the 12 music disciples, and as a man who was aware and conscious of his environment, and as a person who was full of sensibility, erotic, profound. Marvin Gaye. Now, one of my favorite authors, Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston lived from 1891 to 1960. She was a writer and an anthropologist. She was a Harlem Renaissance notable. Her books include novels, short stories, and essays, collections of Black folklore, as well as an autobiography, Dust Tracks on a Road. These are her quotes. I have the map of Dixie on my tongue. It is hard to apply oneself to study when there is no money to pay for food and lodging. When a man keeps beating me to the draw mentally, he begins to get glamorous. It is easy to be hopeful in the day when you can see the things you wish on. I will wrestle me up a future or die trying. Fighting is a game where everyone is the loser. Don't you know you can't get the best of no woman in the talking game? Her tongue is all the weapon a woman got. This is one of my favorite quotes from Zora Neale Hurston. There are years that ask questions and years that answer. There are years in your life that will do nothing but ask questions. And then there will come years in your life that will answer the questions that were asked. Hallelujah. She also said, I've been in sorrow's kitchen and licked out all the pots. When one is too old for love, one finds great comfort in good dinners. His road of thought is what makes every man what he is. Love, this is another one of my favorites of hers. Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place. I had a way of life inside me and I wanted it with a want that was twisting me. Nothing had been done in Negro folklore when the greatest cultural wealth of the continent was disappearing without the world ever realizing it had ever been. Roll your eyes in ecstasy and ape his every move, But until we have placed something upon his street corner that is our own, we are right back where we were when they filed our iron collar off. She's talking about the world of whiteness. I'm going to read that one more time. Roll your eyes in ecstasy and ape or imitate his every move. But until we have placed something upon his street corner that is our own, we are right back where we were when they filed our iron collar off. There is something about poverty that smells like death. Dead dreams dropping off the heart like leaves in a dry season and rotting around the feet. Impulses smothered too long in the fetid air of underground caves. The soul lives in a sickly air. People can be slave ships in shoes. Selah. I am not tragically colored. There's no great sorrow dammed up in my soul, nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. No, I do not weep at the world. I'm too busy sharpening my oyster knife. I've come to know by experience that work is the nearest thing to happiness that I can find. In her last quote here, sometimes I feel discriminated against, but it does not make me angry. It merely astonishes me. How can anyone deny themselves the pleasure of my company? Zora Neale Hurston. And of course, I have to read some from my personal ancestor, Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson lived from 1919 to 1972. He was a baseball player, TV sports analyst, businessman, and activist and fundraiser for the NAACP. He was the first African American to break the color barrier in the major leagues when he was recruited to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. He's the first African American in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and he wrote his own autobiography, I Never Had It Made. Here are some quotes. My fight was against the barriers that kept Negroes out of baseball. This was the area where I found imperfection and where I was able to fight. And I fought because I knew it was not doomed to be a losing fight. I had to fight hard against loneliness, abuse, and the knowledge that any mistake I made would be magnified because I was the only black man out there. Many people resented my impatience and honesty, but I never cared about acceptance as much as I cared about respect. At the beginning of the World Series, I experienced a completely new emotion when the national anthem was played. This time I thought, it is being played for me as much as for anyone else. Fear is a two-edged sword that sometimes cuts the wielder. The many of us who attain what we may and forget those who help us along the line, we've got to remember that there are so many others to pull along the way. The farther they go, the further we all go. Baseball is like a poker game. Nobody wants to quit when he's losing. Nobody wants you to quit when you're ahead. On his retirement, he said this, athletes die twice. And finally, our last person for today, Diana Ross. Born 1944, Diana Ross is a singer, a film and TV actress, and entrepreneur. She was the lead singer of the Supremes. Films that she has starred in included Lady Sings the Blues, Mahogany, and The Wiz. Her autobiography is entitled Secrets of a Sparrow. Here's what she has to say. I have found thoughts and words to be the foundation for success and failure in life. I'm teaching my kids when to whisper and when to shout. I really deeply believe that dreams do come true. Often they might not come true when you want them. They come in their own time. I'm not really a songwriter. I'm an interpreter. So in a sense, I am an actress first and foremost. I act out the songs and I lead with my heart. I never considered it to be a disadvantage to be a black woman. I never wanted to be anything else. We have brains. We're beautiful. We should be able to do anything we set our minds to. I think a responsibility comes with notoriety, but I never think of it as power. I was lucky, and if I have had any bad memories, I hope they're not true. Diana Ross. All right. I hope you have enjoyed the reading of those living elders and ancestors. Now, if you would like to join me for conversation, you can click on the camera and I will bring you on. Again, this is our final episode for season 13. If you are looking at us on YouTube, which is where we are also, I want to say thank you for your time and attention. Come join us over on IG for our talkback section of this broadcast. All right, I'll see you over there. And if you're listening by